Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Kuwait Television live program on the first China-Arab State Summit and the China GCC Summit hosted in Saudi Arabia's Riyadh. Arab, Gulf, and Chinese leaders head to Riyadh today armored with the desire to further enhance mutual support and expand cooperation in a joint effort to build a China-Arab community with a shared future for the new era. The summit is a bid to create a bright future for China-Arab relations and make contributions to world peace and development. Before the summit kicks off, the 154th preparatory for the GCC foreign ministers concluded in Riyadh. During the meeting, the importance of the upcoming summit and its topics, focusing on the security and welfare of the region, was highlighted. This first China-Arab summit will become an epoch-making milestone in the history of China-Arab relations, with China and Arab countries as a stable, cooperative partners that meet each other halfway and go hand in hand in accordance with the times. To talk about all the importance of this historical summit and the impacts of global warming on the world, we are accompanied with economist Mr. Nader Saleh Al-Ubaid. Before we start our special coverage with our esteemed guest, let's view this report and get back to you.
More than 20 initial agreements worth $29.26 billion will be signed during Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia this week. In addition to the deals, China and Saudi Arabia will sign a strategic partnership agreement and a plan to harmonize the kingdom's Vision 2030 with China's Belt and Road Initiative. A summit which will be held in Riyadh will also witness launching Prince Mohammed bin Salman Award for Cultural Cooperation between Saudi Arabia and China. Parted by thousands of kilometers apart, the two nations have always been connected for decades. In the year 2014, Saudi Arabia emerged as China's biggest supplier of crude oil, while the value of bilateral trade had reached $69.1 billion. 3 years later, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud had visited China to cement Saudi ties with the world's second largest economy, where the year 2017 saw deals worth $65 billion being inked. In 2019, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited China as part of a tour of Asia, where he had met with Chinese President Xi Jinping and other high-ranking officials. As both countries had their own long-term strategic development plans, China with its Belt and Road Initiative and Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, the two leaders expressed their willingness to collaborate on connecting their initiatives. The two sides had also signed a cooperation agreement for the enhancement of research and studies in the maritime transport industry. The Saudi Crown Prince also agreed to allocate $10 billion to establish a refinery and petrochemical complex in China. Saudi Arabia is China's top oil supplier, making up 18% of China's total crude oil purchases, and state-run Saudi Aramco has annual supply deals with half a dozen Chinese refiners. Strengthening trade ties and regional security will be on top of the priorities during the Chinese president's participation in a China-Gulf summit and a China-Arab summit that diplomats say is also investing in future technologies as a pillar of economic diversification, which has gained impetus in a global transition away from fossil fuels.
Riyadh lifts the curtains on 3 summits, welcoming their highnesses, majesties, and excellencies of a prominent GCC, Arab and Chinese leaders. Political arenas, economic files, and numerous challenges to be conveyed in the heart of the kingdom.
Welcome again to this Kuwait Television live program on the first China-Arab State Summit and the China GCC Summit hosted in Riyadh, with our guest here in the studio, economist Mr. Nader Saleh Al-Ubaid. Mr. Nader, history indicates that Arab-Chinese relations since 1956 has contributed to strengthening the infrastructure of the modern state in most Arab countries, like railways, ports, roads, sports, health, industrial facilities, etc. And the most important development in the history of relations will remain the signing of the document of the Arab-Chinese Forum in 2004. The signing of this document was considered the most important development in the Arab-Chinese relations at that time. And it's worth noting that another agreement was signed in July 2004 that included China and the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council states. Mr. Nader, can you describe the image of Arab and Gulf cooperation with China, and how did the economic agreements help in developing the nations?
First of all, thank you for having us and to contribute in this very important event. Actually, the relationship between the GCC and the Arab world with China goes to many years. But what drives now the importance of this event is now the economy, and the economic issue, now the drive for the even political relationship. Now China is becoming one of the main players worldwide, and I think this event definitely will add an added value to the Arab countries, the Arab world, and GCC as well. It is important because we have noticed that the agreement was signed in 2004. But it seems that, China was not very much ready to be exposed as we see it now in terms of economy. And when we see the last 5-10 years, we see that the relationship and the business and the volume of business went up to $2.5 trillion coming from the GCC beside Iran. So we are talking about very sizable relationship. Now, the diversification that China has, I think in this summit, we need to maximize the benefit as Arab world toward this relationship. We have noticed that Kuwait, during this period, represented by KIA, had an office or have an office called Cairo, which is Kuwait Investment Representative Office. That was active in 2009, and the reason of having that office to be exposed not only to China, to the countries in the Far East, Korea, Japan, Singapore, but now we see that this visit reflects different type of fields and activities. And I think it's important for the countries, especially Kuwait and the GCC, that having one side to negotiate and improve the terms of negotiation, I think it is important at this level.
Mm. And can you tell us what is the economic development expected? What are the most important projects that we expect to be implemented?
Well, actually, we know that China now, they are the leader in technology, they are in military arms, they are into infrastructure, industries, refineries, you name it. I think now, if you see Kuwait, especially Kuwait, if we apply this as the GCC, all of us, we are keen about the infrastructure and diversification, especially diversification in terms of revenues to the government. Now, since we have a single source of oil revenues, I think it's important to consider the diversification in the relationship business-wise in terms of refineries and even recycling. Now China is leading in different ways. So what do we expect? I think it's hard to identify because China has a lot to contribute. Let's ask ourselves, what do we need? I think we need to identify what do we need. And if there are some comments between what the requirement among the GCC and the Arab world or Arab countries, I think we'll be in better position to get whatever we need as a strategic partnership. Now, what's good about this, it is important that it is good to have an exposure in different ways, not restricting or limiting your exposure and your relationship with Europe or America. Now it's good because each country has its own beauty and nature and unique things. In terms of technology, we see now the GCC, all of them, they have contributed, or at least they are focusing on what we see now, G5, okay, coming from China. So when you see the countries all allied toward or one side, I think this will have a heavy discussion in favor of the negotiators and the benefits of mutual interests. Now, China is opening up in different way. Now, we don't see them only in GCC. We see them approaching different countries. We see them approaching Sudan, Somalia.
They're networking, basically.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is the best way of selling the country.
Exactly, yes.
Now, crossing, selling everything, I think it is a smart move from a country like China and having a good alliance with the GCC in specific. Now, there is a mutual benefit. Definitely, we are selling crude, and they are one of the most important in terms of oil. But in return, I think we need to benefit from the other side of their industries, knowledge, and what's important, in my opinion, from an economic point of view, we don't need only the industries or the final products to be exported to the GCC. What do we need? I think now, from economic point of view, it is important to have kind of alliance with the big countries as companies as strategic partners, and to transfer the know-how. Transferring the know-how is much better, especially that we have seen, during the COVID-19, that they delivered a very good example, okay, in terms of economy. Why? Because, the small businesses and all, they contributed fairly during the obstacle or the critical time during COVID-19. Now, in my opinion, if we focus on the Kuwait as well, there are many. We have a lot of challenges: infrastructure, roads, ports, and we see that Saudi Arabia and UAE, they are benefiting from this relationship.
Exactly. It's time we put ourselves in that game as well.
Yes, I think it's important, especially now we have roads need to be at least reconsidered, infrastructure, boards. Now with the new vision, when we see the new vision that His Highness the Prime Minister indicated 2-3 weeks ago, the government is focusing on healthcare, education, technology, sport, entertainment. All these objectives can be contributed by the Chinese government.
Yes.
So it is important to, before you go, to identify, or we identify what we need, so at least we get the maximum of that relationship.
I agree, yes. Very insightful. And we'll get back to that after this. As we all know, China-Arab relations have achieved great development at various levels, especially on the economic level, with China firmly ranking first as the largest trading partner of the Arab countries. And this is a clear indication of the development of Arab-Chinese relations.
The Arab countries and the People's Republic of China have historically friendly and harmonious relations, and this distinguished relationship continues to this day, as this bilateral relations between the two countries are based on the principles of respect and non-interference in internal affairs or foreign policies. The two sides have strengthened dialogue, exchanged and mutual learnings, and have always respected each other's social system and development path regardless of differences in ideology. Sino-Arab relations have achieved great development at various levels, especially on the economic level, and the total volume of trade exchange between China and Arab countries has reached $266 billion by the end of 2021. In addition, China has firmly ranked first as the largest trading partner of the Arab countries, and this is a clear indication of the development of Arab-Chinese relations. The policy of going east by many Arab countries, specifically the Arab Gulf states, is no longer just a slogan. It has become a reflection of a set of geostrategic and geoeconomic transformations that the Middle East and China are going through, amid joint interaction from Middle Eastern states that have begun to move eastward to enhance their cooperation with Asian powers. There is a general trend on the part of the Asian powers, indicating that they seek more than protecting their interests in the Middle East region, which are concentrated in providing energy, securing its supplies, and obtaining mutual investments opportunities. Chinese data showed that direct Chinese investments in all Arab countries amounted to $42 billion in 2019, an increase of 18.8% over the previous year. The value of contracted project contracts signed by Chinese companies with Arab countries amounted to $32.5 billion in 2018, down 8.7% year-on-year, while the business value of Chinese companies reached $30.5 billion, up 9.8% year-on-year. Chinese official figures indicated that the total volume of Chinese investment in the Arab region rose $36.7 billion in 2004 to $224.3 billion in 2018. In 2018, China provided an aid package to Arab countries amounting to about $23 billion. About 87% of Chinese aid was in the form of loans allocated to developing projects and creating job opportunities, and $6 million of this loan aid was in the form of humanitarian and construction aid for Syria, Yemen, Jordan, and Lebanon. The traditional China-Arab friendship has laid a solid foundation for China-Arab strategic partnership in the new era. Since modern times, China and the Arab countries, both developing countries, have supported each other in the struggle against imperialism and colonialism, which has greatly prompted friendship between the two sides. At the Bandung Conference in 1955, China not only communicated with Arab countries that had achieved independence at that time, but also voiced its support of the just struggle of the Palestinian people. In 1971, the UN General Assembly at its 26th session adopted Resolution 2758 with an overwhelming majority, including Arab countries, to restore its rights to the People's Republic of China and to recognize the representative of the government of the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate representative of China to the UN.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia shines brighter on the world map horizon. The first China-Arab State Summit and the China GCC Summit take place on the prosperous land of Riyadh.
Welcome again to this Kuwait Television live program on the first China-Arab State Summit and the China GCC Summit hosted in Riyadh. With our guest here in the studio, economist Mr. Nader Al-Abeid. Mr. Nader, how would joint cooperation strategy open economic prospects to face global challenges and the geopolitical conditions?
Well, in fact, you see, now since we are oil producer country, definitely one of the concern is the environment. This is one of the challenges. I think with the technology and the achievement, the good achievement from the Chinese party, I think we need to cooperate in finding good solution to contribute in that direction. This is one of the challenges that we might see in terms of agriculture. Everybody knows that China used to be a very agricultural country.
Yes.
Now, with the technology, we need to have something to balance all the challenges, because you see now, the international forum, usually they are talking about the environment, the recycling, friendly environment, so many things, you know, might create a barrier for any development. Now, having something to be at least a trial to be introduced as to come over the challenges, I think this is one of the fields that we can cooperate with China, because usually it's better to be proactive rather than being reactive. So, this is another area where we can, it could be at least considered in one of the discussions. Challenges, we need to be reactive, proactive in different ways. This summit, now we are talking about more than 14, 20 countries.
Yes.
And each one has their own challenges. Now, this event, is at least it's a cement in the ground for something to be built even in a later stage. We don't expect to solve all the challenges now, but at least having a constructive relationship on regular basis. This is very important. Now, with different levels, having, because I think the structure of the relationship or the cooperation, which was signed 2004, it was measured and well structured. How committed? It was a bit loose for different reasons. Now I think we need to commit to have it. Why? Because at least we need to help even the other countries who are facing problems. If you see now, we all Arab countries, there are many challenges in Iraq, in Sudan, in Somalia, in so many countries. We don't want to focus only on the GCC, where want to be selective in certain challenges. No, we have to consider all the challenges that even for certain poor environment.
Yes.
So I think this is very important to consider and to have a milestone and to measure the performance of this summit and the result of it. This is one. Second, now the execution of certain objectives, here we see the challenges. Now, talking about the highlights of the objectives or the vision, usually it's easy to talk about it. The execution is very important, especially now we have different environment in each country within the Arab world. So I think the challenges might come in a later stage, but at least with a goodwill, we have to consider it, and we need to measure it on a regular basis and to revisit each challenge and how to take care of it in a very professional manner.
And proactive, like you said.
And proactive.
Yes, yes, I agree. How does the 2023 vision aim at transforming Kuwait into a financial trade hub regionally and internationally? And how is it becoming more attractive to investors? As
we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of objectives within the Kuwait Vision 2035. We consider ourselves a bit late in executing the original plan which started in 2005. Our plan and our vision started 2005. Unfortunately, we are a bit late in certain activities. Now, it is good timing to catch up with the speed of this relationship. In my opinion, I think it is important, especially that the 11, let's say, factors that was reflected in the vision of 2035, the healthcare. And the healthcare, we are struggling. We are spending a lot in terms of healthcare, and we have to tackle this within that forum. Talking about infrastructure, ports. I think it is, the timing is excellent to maximize the benefit of this relationship and this visit to catch up with the vision, especially that, we're talking about entertainment, we were talking about ports, healthcare, education, even
infrastructure, basically.
Infrastructure, it is needed.
Yes.
It is needed now. And especially that, talking about the most important thing, residential cities. Residential cities.
Elaborate. What do you mean by residential cities?
Like the obstacles that we are having with Junub al-Mutlaq.
Okay.
Or building new cities. Or when we had the what we call Madinat al-Harir, Silk City. These are excellent hubs and business hubs to create a destination. Now, it is important to have alliance with a strategic partner like China to reflect their interests in that cities.
Yes.
When we talk about a relationship, government to government, there is different way of commitment, and on top of that, it is a good school for coaching the human resources. This is very important. I don't need them, or I don't bring them to build. No, I have a different relationship. Coach, train, so many things, creating schools for sustainable contribution, and this is the catch. I don't need them to come, and they are not contractors. They are not here for contracting. They are here for a long relationship. So this is one of the, I'm thinking of economic city. There is a good contribution. I can use them because they have good economic cities.
Yes.
And talking about energy projects, there are different ways. Solar projects. My point here, I can at least give the opportunity of the human resources that I have in Kuwait to learn from this experience. Everybody knows that, the last 10, 15 years, China was ahead of everybody. But it is important that we are focusing on this relationship, not only for supply. I think the government should consider the coaching process, the education, changing the culture. One of the obstacles that we did not maximize the benefit of our relationship when it started 2004. You know why?
Why?
The language is one of the obstacles.
The language barriers?
Of course.
Okay, yeah.
Now, big number, or at least the Chinese are talking English. At that time, the English language was limited, so everybody was hesitating to participate or to communicate with that community. Now, you see it differently. Now they are not waiting for anybody to come. They are approaching markets, which is completely different attitude. It is a very respectful approach, professional approach, and let's take advantage of that. I think Kuwait has a lot to benefit from this relationship, and as we mentioned earlier, and I think the beauty of the Chinese government are open, and they are willing to give. So let's take advantage of this.
Yes. Hopefully it is a long-term and fruitful relationship. Well, Mr. Nader, thank you for your time and valuable insight. It was a pleasure to have you here with us today. Yes, please.
The most important thing now, are we ready? Because, you know, we are talking about bringing strategic big companies. We are thinking of attracting foreign big companies. The most important thing, are we ready in terms of laws and infrastructure, environment, business environment? This is very important. Yes. Before we bring anybody, I think we need to revisit all our laws and tax models to make it attractive for them to be with us here and to take the advantage of that.
Yes, that is the question. Are we ready? Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Nader, again for the valuable insight and being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Well, China has emerged in recent decades as a significant trading partner for many Cooperation Council states, most notably Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Most of the GCC governments depend on energy trade to support the diversification of their economies, while China requires the Gulf hydrocarbons to power its economy.
Deepening, while cultural and people-to-people exchanges are flourishing, which explains why Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, during a meeting with the foreign ministers of the GCC countries on the sidelines of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly, described China and the GCC countries as good friends, partners, and brothers, while calling their mutually beneficial relationship a model for cooperation between China and developing countries. The close relationship has been developed partly on the strong complementaries they share. The GCC countries are seeking to diversify their economies, but at present they still depend on their energy trade for that, while China needs stable supplies for crude oil to power its economy. For example, Saudi Arabia provided 17% of China's oil imports in 2021, making it China's top crude oil supplier. Apart from energy, there is growing synergy between China and the GCC countries to explore cooperation opportunities in other areas, such as telecommunications, artificial intelligence, and smart cities. For example, China has also participated in the GCC countries' development of 5G mobile networks, with its telecommunications giant Huawei playing an active role in their digital transformation. Many GCC countries have been technology-based cooperation with China as an active means to help them diversify their industries and build knowledge economies. The China proposed Belt and Road Initiative has added new momentum to Sino-GCC cooperation, as many GCC countries have aligned their national development programs with the Belt and Road project. For example, Saudi Arabia is synergizing its Saudi Vision 2030 with the Belt and Road Initiative by enhancing cooperation with China on energy, infrastructure, finance, and high tech. In order to bring bilateral relations to a new level, China and the GCC countries have now agreed to work jointly to reach a free trade agreement at an early date. Negotiations on the free trade deal, which started as early as 2004, have yielded many fruitful results, with agreement reached on a majority of issues concerning trade in goods. An FTA would further strengthen their already close trade relations and inject new vitality into the strategic partnership between China and the GCC countries.
the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia shines brighter on the world map horizon. The first China-Arab State Summit and the China GCC Summit take place on the prosperous land of Riyadh.
Welcome again to this Kuwait Television live coverage of the 2022 Arab Sino and Gulf Sino Summit hosted in Saudi Arabia with our esteemed guest. We are joined by phone by Dr. Aid Al-Manna, an academy and political analyst. Dr. Aid, during the Chinese president's visit to Riyadh, 3 summits are held: Saudi Chinese, Gulf Chinese and Arab Chinese, in the presence of more than 30 international leaders reflecting the impact of these summits. Could you please explain to us China's relationship with the Middle East from 3 dimensions: economic, international and political side?
Well, could you kindly just raise your face because I find it difficult to hear you very well. But as I understand your question, that's definitely the Chinese president visit is actually a turning point in the relation between China and the Arab world as a whole. Actually, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia invited the president to attend bilateral talking with the Saudis and other talks with the Gulf states, a third one with the Arab countries. The relation between China and most of the Arab countries is not actually a new one, at least since 1949 for the recent time. Kuwait, for instance, established relations since the early 60s. I remember that Sheikh Jabir Al-Ahmad Al-Jabir Al-Sabah, who was at that time Minister of Finance, visited China to establish a kind of ties with the Chinese. Afterward, actually, the other Gulf state or the GCC countries followed a step. We find that in the 80s, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and others. Saudi Arabia started in 1990s, the relation. Other countries like Egypt, Syria, Iraq, they have a long-standing relation before us. But the relation with the rich countries like our region actually boosted very well. The Chinese wanted our markets to have their products to be sold, and they want our oil and gas as energy for them to be imported by them, exported by us. And that there is actually a mutual relation between the Arab world and China. China is one of the friendly nations. Its government does not intervene in the internal politics of any country. Also does not motivate a rebellion to revolt against their own government like other countries, for instance, in the West. And therefore, it is accepted. Also, the values, whether it is traditional or religion, we actually not far away from each other. Some of the aspects in the West, like homosexuality, is not accepted in China, and it's not accepted in us. The Chinese do not impose their values and tradition or ideology on the others. They respect yours, and we have to respect theirs. And this is a good, actually, move to have a good relation with a nation who respect you and you respect this kind of countries.
Dr. Al-Manna, can you tell us what are the potential opportunities that can benefit the countries of the region from this summit?
Yeah. Definitely, China is one of the biggest industrial countries in the world. It is also technologically advanced country, and I'm sure we benefited from this kind of productions and technology. I can say that most of the China technology is intermediate, which is actually fit to our societies, and afterward they can improve it, and also we can improve this kind of technology to be advanced. Our relation in economic basis, as you noticed, that with the Saudi, actually, the Gulf states, they now signed agreements to have a $20 billion agreement between the two parties. More of the industry, whether cars or technology or others, exported to the Arab world. Our markets can also import more of their productions. The energy, oil and gas, they're on demand, and they want to secure this kind. I think now we are having a mutual relation, whether with the West and the East. We are not dependent on one source. We have to also diversify our source of income, and we have to diversify also our friendship with other nations to have all these nations friendly on the basis of mutual interests.
And how will the summits tackle means to boost relations in all fields, specifically in the field of economic cooperation?
Well, definitely, any problem arise will be discussed between the two parties and will be solved if it has happened. As you know, they have manpower, they have technology, and definitely we need to have this kind of experience of the Chinese. I'm sure they will provide us in the Arab world with their own technology. As I know that the Saudis are starting to learn Chinese language. I think we have in Kuwait like that. In the future, I know it's not that easy language, but I'm sure there will be learning language. They have actually, and that's I tested myself in China. They have so many people who speak Arabic language, and that will be easing the difficulties and solving all the differences or disputes. In respect to the economic field and cooperation, the Chinese, they have their own products and they want to export it to us. If you remember, that's the Silk Road, probably end to Bobian Island, probably will be in other countries, and that's to be a step to other countries like Europe and Africa and other nations through the seas and oceans. Definitely there are mutual interests between us and the Chinese. They need our energy as oil and gas, and others probably gold or something like it, and we need their experience and technology, and that's we have a good relation. We're hoping to have more cooperation between us and the Chinese.
Well, thank you for your time and valuable insight, Dr. Al-Mannah. It has been a pleasure to talk to you this evening. Finally, joining us via phone call all the way from Egypt is Hind Sayyed Hani, Foreign Affairs Editor of Al-Ahram newspaper. Mrs. Hind, considering the historical ties between China and the Arab League countries, can you tell us about the developments and strategic partnership and the level of bilateral cooperation and mutual support between China and the League of Arab States?
Actually, the path towards a Riyadh Arab-Chinese summit has gone through several steps based on a huge legacy of exchange and cooperation. In fact, Egypt was the first Arab state that established bilateral diplomatic relation with China in 1956. By the year 1990, China has completed its diplomatic relations with the whole Arab states by establishing diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Since 1956, China has contributed in enhancing the infrastructure in most Arab countries like railroads, ports, roads, health and sportive and industrial facilities. China also has supported the core Arab issues on international arena, especially the Palestinian issue. The most important development in the bilateral relations was the signing of the document of the Arab-Chinese Forum in the year 2004. We can notice that the economic exchange between the two sides jumped from about $37 billion in the year 2004 to $330 billion in the year 2021.
And can you explain the remarkable achievements made since the establishment of the China-Arab States Cooperation Forum in 2004 and the forum's role in boosting the China-Arab ties?
By signing the document of the Chinese-Arab Forum, it was a cornerstone in the relations between the two sides. In July of the same year, an agreement has been signed between China and Gulf states. In May 2010, a document establishing strategic cooperation was signed. The momentum in the Arab-Chinese relations continued as most of Arab countries individually also signed bilateral strategic cooperation agreements. And the Arab League signed agreements of cooperation and strategic dialogue in several fields. That momentum facilitated the accession and the support of Arab countries to most of China's regional and international initiatives, like the Belt and the Road Initiative and the Global Security Initiative, which calls for replacing confrontation with dialogue and consultation, and the Global Development Initiative. A number of Arab countries joined the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building in Asia, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Arab countries led by Egypt and Saudi Arabia may also join the BRICS group, which enjoys significant Chinese weight.
Thank you, Ms. Hind Sayyed Hani, from Foreign Affairs Editor of Al-Ahram newspaper. Thank you for your time and valuable insight. This brings us to the end of this Kuwait Television Live coverage of the 2022 Arab SINO and Gulf SINO Summit hosted in Saudi Arabia. Thank you for joining us.